So we've spoken about AI from a team perspective, and now we zoom out to the bigger structural shift. What does marketing look like when creativity and relevance can be delivered at radically improved unit economics? Please join me in welcoming AI specialist and founder of Gain, Per Lagerstrom.
Hi, everybody. My name is Per. When we get to Christmas this year, marketing and agency as we know today will not be the same. ChatGPT launched 1,185 days ago. Since then, we've been working hard with tools all over marketing and agency work to do what we do better. This morning started with a conversation around attention. 50% at least of the spend that we put into shifting attention has no discernible impact on intention. The only thing that matters is intention. That is intention to buy the product or the experience or the service we put in front of them. So we've spent the last couple of years inventing and innovating and trying new things with tools. The challenge with that is that we've thrown new tools at old processes, which in any business conversation actually is a very bad thing to do. The good news is actually that more than half of what we spend on attention doesn't lead to intention, because that's a massive opportunity. So we haven't cracked that yet. I will share with you why we now have reached the point where this is all coming together and it's now reached a tipping point where we're actually reinventing or redesigning the fundamental business models behind how we do it. So instead of throwing tools at content production, you're going to take the whole process of content production, creatives and everything else, and redesign that AI first. You take planning process, and you take everything else, and actually then you get to the root of the fundamental potential here. Okay? For some of you, this is going to be super scary. For other people, it's going to be beyond exciting. It's the choice that you have on how you look at it. What I'm describing is, in my opinion, and you can decide that I'm wrong, is inevitable. And the timelines is not 10 years out or visionary. I'm not blueprinting stuff here. I'm talking about actually where this is landing now. I'm working with 5 CMOs at the moment. They got 3 billion in spend between them, over 3 billion. And they've got 600 people working on their existing processes. Their cost went up last year because of the AI tools. Their production went down, if anything else. That doesn't mean that they and their people are stupid. It's just how innovation actually works when it goes through creative destruction. There's one slide in all this that matters, but I'll get there quite quickly, okay? All right? This is not the one. My background, I had 15 years at McKinsey, and this is why this is relevant. So I work with boards, and I'm building my own businesses. I kind of don't do the stuff in between. So I'm a co-founder of Sens. Some of you will know what that is. That is a market research business that actually get to intent, because we can model intent on consumers at low cost and high speed. Yeah, and I'll take you through why that is important, because that is one building block in all this, and it led us to this point. I'm here talking about my advisor business, Gain, and what I'm learning from all these CMOs. Okay, so actually this is me having a conversation with Gemini, downloading everything that I'm working on at the moment, and say, actually, what's going on? And actually Gemini's view and my view is aligned. The key challenge for marketing, how do we take all these resources that we throw at attention, focus that on intention, and turning marketing into a sales machine? And before you fall into the victim thing around actually, we're going to kill off all the creatives, we're not going to kill off the creatives. We're going to give creatives extraordinarily effective tools to deploy that creativity in a much better, much smarter way. It is also entirely true that what can be automated will be automated. So when it comes to manual processes and repeatable processes, whether that is an Amazon warehouse or whether that is in a content production process, that will be automated, but creative will be not. It's a false paradox that the work we're doing means that robots going to drive this. Robots going to do the repeatable stuff, and really good creatives going to work with these things as the co-pilots. If you get your head around that, there's no threat in this. If you get your head around we're going to protect existing processes that are broken and crap, you've got a problem. So why now? So Ross, he's here, a good friend of mine, Ross Norton, is one of the best technologists in retail. He just walked out of Pepcore 2 weeks ago to participate in all this good fun. Yeah. He's an example. I'll share some of his stories within this. There's 4 factors that's driving why this is happening now. And I'm literally talking months. Yeah. We're running for we've got about 9 months running up until Christmas. And we will be deploying full-on models inside these marketing functions that fundamentally reshapes them. Let me start out with why now, why not later, and why not earlier? And it's 4 broad factors. The first is global, but also here in South Africa. We've got a material waste in marketing. CEOs knows that, and they're turning to the CMOs and say, I want more for less. Because I get in other functions, and why on earth am I not getting that in marketing? Yeah, that's created an enormous amount of pressure in the system of doing more with less. The second factor is that we have now access to windows into the mind of the consumer. And this is key to do marketing better. Because if we can understand what the consumer really wants better than they understand themselves, and we can get that at low cost and high speed, we can actually co-create the campaigns. And how that plays out in reality is through predictive trackers and very rapid pre-testing tools. Because if I can pre-test everything very quickly at low cost, I can actually embed that in the creative process. If I have a tracker that measures the emotional impact for having on consumers, and I can produce that at low cost and that predicts sales, I have a bridge into sales. I have the 2 bookends for a reinventing marketing. I have a proxy for sales, so let's create more love versus the competing brand or trust or X factor or whatever it might be, and pre-test everything and build that into processes. And we build an engine behind that. That's in essence what we predict is going to happen this year. That's windows into the mind. The other thing is the AI and tech and the cost and the modeling tools have just now started to come together. And they're starting to talk to each other and they're accessible. Ross just shared an example of one of the retailers here in South Africa that spent 3 years to get scheduling and planning right on what it is they procure and buy and stick out in the stores. They spent 3 years doing that and that failed. An AI player just did that in a week. Because it was using new tech versus old tech. This is a bit like tanks versus drones. Yeah? And I'm not being facetious or anything. It's just extraordinarily, almost intimidating how good these tools are becoming at writing code. At Sense, I spent 15 years at McKinsey, which some of you will know that's 80 hours a week, which is not a good way to spend your life, okay? But I'm pretty good at looking at a data set and saying what's the summary, what's the story. Yeah. In October last year, the recommendation engine at Sense started to outperform me. At this point in time, I have no chance. I can spend 2 days on a market research data set. The machine's ability to see through that set, frame the whys, and get to the action is superior to anything that I could ever do. The cost of running that is about 2 million tokens. And for those of you that care about that kind of stuff, that's around $3. That analytical cycle that reads that data and turn that into actionable recommendation for marketeers is $3 and 5 minutes processing time. Okay? That's just an example, right? And in and of itself, that's cool. It is when you start to stitch it together into new models, it really starts to make a difference. So coding agents, elastic stack, and stitchable components, together with AI tech and modeling at very low cost. These are the forces that makes it happen now. Together with CMOs and senior business leaders to say, actually, we reached a tipping point. We were tinkering with AI. Actually, we learned a lot, but I didn't get the outcomes. The time has come for that now. So what does this mean? It means that we are starting to think about marketing as a venture. We're all coded to think about it as a function that does a number of processes in various ways to achieve an outcome. But it's actually quite a loose link between those resources and that outcome. That's why we have trackers, and that's why we talk about attention, and that's why we talk about what people kind of broadly feel about our brand. Yeah? But actually in this world, we're starting to make the link between input, resources, creative, and the outcomes we achieve much, much tighter. And that's what a business does that produces outcomes. It doesn't matter if it produces gadgets in a factory or if it produces something that shifts the emotion around trust. Yeah? We've never been able to do that before. We shouldn't beat ourselves up. We didn't have the tools. But we have them now, and so do the competition. So if you don't deal with the fact, then they're going to do it to us. So what we're going to see here is we estimate on the 3 billion that I'm talking about 20% of that spend, yeah, could either be taken out or we can deliver more growth for that. We're talking about an orders of magnitude improvement in efficiency. The production cost to get equal amounts of attention or intention is probably half by Christmas of what that is today. That's because of the automation of the underlying processes that don't need to be done manually. Now, these numbers are not fictitious, they're real. Yeah? We don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but by Christmas we will know. But these magnitudes are starting to creep into actual budgets. The other is that actually, for the consumer, we can be relevant at the scale that we just couldn't be before. So when we can actually go and talk to 5,000 consumers to pre-test this campaign idea we have and get the answer back within a week, and actually get actions on how we can do it better, we serve the consumer. Because we don't go out with crap and try back and forth before we eventually get it right. We're actually faster to get it right. Because in effect, we got an ability to ask them what they think. And we're going to waste less on media spend. This has big implications. This is what Sense has done in the last 3.5 years. So the data set that sits behind this has informed that understanding on how to work with the consumer in a different way. But Sense alone cannot make marketing much better and reinvent marketing. What really drives it is when you can start to put this kind of data into the mix and feed it into the models. And I'll share with you the fundamental shift you're going to see is clients, CMOs, and marketing teams building their own models and own co-pilots. Not 15 tools that tells them what to do, but actually their own brain in the middle. That's the fundamental shift that's going to happen in the next 6 months. Okay? This is an example of the kind of predictive data you can get. Some of you will have seen this before. On the basis of a 10-minute conversation with consumers, in this case 500 to 1,000 consumers, where they answer questions through digital interaction, a conversation, Sense can score love, trust, loyalty, and X factor from -100 to +100. Their Sense's clients does this every quarter and does this for their own brands and competing brands. And this data is predictive of sales. That changes on how you conceptually do marketing because you now target emotions. You see whether the campaign works or not. It's created a bridge. This is the only slide that matters. And do forgive me for being a bit dry. Okay? But this is what we call AI-first marketing. And let me explain this. This is the only thing that matters because this is our view on where we think this is going to land. Okay? This is a conceptual architecture. It's not technical. Yeah? But it explains how this piece comes together. In the middle, you have the consumer. Consumer's intent is driven by 4 things. It's not driven by how much shit we throw at them. Okay? Their intent is driven by who am I as a personality at the personality level. Is shopping a chore? Is shopping something I get a real kick out of? Do I have an abundance mindset? Do I have a scarcity mindset, which is loosely correlated with wallet but not strongly? There's 5 or 6 behavioral spectra that determines my intent. Then emotions, how do I feel? What do my financials look like? And what is the context within which I spend my life? Those factors determine intent. Yeah? We throw attention resources at that without understanding that. In this world, if you look on the right, our clients are having continuous conversations with the consumers, now through panels, through this modern types of market research, and increasingly through synthetics. just every day, and it's going to move to millions of conversations every day. And through that, they will be able to profile and capture emotions and the quality of experience for people. Sense live on the right side of interpreting that for the 50 clients that you saw on the previous slide. And they have an information advantage because they learn from, everybody's learning from everybody. They feed that in to the Sense 5 engine through pre-testers and through predictive trackers. And to give you a sense, the tracker that you saw on the previous page for a large South African retailer cost around 150,000 Rand per quarter. You all know roughly what trackers cost across a large corporate. It's fundamentally different, and the way the economics run inside is fundamentally different. On the left side, you have what the clients have themselves, which is activity data. How much web visits do I have? How much products do I sell? They have the lagging data. Sense, in this case, providing the leading data. And in this world, Sense is going to have to run very hard, because what Sense has done is opening up a new category, which is performance insights or predictive insights as a service. There's going to be lots of competitors coming after that space as well. So what's happening with the clients is they're building their own engine in the middle. They're training an engine. So they get input from Sense and everything else they have. I mean, those of you that work with Gemini and Claude and the others, imagine a big retailer take all the research that's been done the last 10 years and just dump it into the machine and say, Gemini, this is context. Now look at the campaign idea that we have through that context and tell me how we should do this campaign. Those models are being built here. And this will build their own co-pilots for their own professionals. That's why this is super cool for really good creatives, because it's going to cut through all the fluff. And you're going to have a machine that is trained on plays like Sense, trained on your own data, and everything else you have on the shelf and every other source that you have. Do you see how this is starting to come together? And behind that, every single process gets redesigned from scratch with AI first. Content production, planning, scheduling, which only takes 30 to 60 to 90 days to go and do from where we are now. This is what we're building right now. And my guess is when we come to Christmas, this is going to be live for 4 or 5 retailers in South Africa. At the very first releases on this, those of you that work with LLMs, this thing is pretty stupid, pretty autistic, and makes shit recommendations. It does. But 60 days later, suddenly something comes together, and suddenly you get wow. Yeah, because you've got a closed loop training here. The fundamentals going on here, it's Sense is working on the right side, which is they have a information advantage on what the consumer wants and doesn't want, because it's trained across many clients, many contexts. It does not have an information advantage versus the clients, because the client has their own context, and they have an information advantage there. That's why almost inevitably, if you look on the economic forces at work here, almost inevitably a large retailer is going to build their own model. They're not going to let that sit with the agency. They are not going to let that sit with providers. It's almost inevitable, because the cost and the effort to set up the model sits in 5 million Rand, sits in 10 million Rand, and retailers are investing billion plus in CapEx at the moment into AI tools. And a lot of that is going to get redirected into actually feed a proprietary model. Because where does the moat sit for a retailer in 5 years from now, 3 years from now? I know the consumer better than the other oaks. I'm actually better at shifting intention with less resources than them. And at the back on that, I'm better at executing. That's the only moat that's going to be left here. Right? This doesn't take emotions out of this. This doesn't take creative out of this. You know? It just allows emotions being built at a scale and an efficiency and efficacy we never had before. It just means the creative is going to operate on platforms that are just much better. Yeah. It does mean for anybody who thinks that the old world's going to last, that is going to be a very hard space to defend. Yeah. This is reality. If I had tried to build it, if Ross and I have been trying to build this, say, a year ago, I would probably been a 50, 100, 200 million Rand build. It would take 12 to 18 months to develop the software. We're now building the software and the analytics behind this in weeks. So if one retailer can do it, any retailer can do it, and there's going to be a race to actually who builds the best information advantage. So this is my bet on actually the closest I can share on what I think the new game is. It is actually our clients, if your agencies, your clients, in my case, Census clients and those I advise, they're going to build their own models. And by that, they're now building this with legacy IT. That doesn't work. So it's built outside in stacks together with people like me and Ross. It's built in Gemini, it's built here at Innovation City, and it's built with coding agents and developers that are comfortable working with that. It's not the normal providers, it's not the normal stuff. It's a new world. But it's very real. And I'm not here to scare anybody. I'm actually super excited about what's going on. But it is a new game. And actually for 1,185 days after ChatGPT, we've been experimenting, all of us, and we've done bravely so. And many of us feel that actually has it fundamentally changed things. We kind of think that it has, or we're waiting for that change to happen. And when it comes to retail and when it comes to marketing, this is that change. And it's this year. Yeah. That's it. But seriously, that's, I'd rather take a question or two and, when we're here now today. So I'm sharing, this is fresh off the press. We couldn't have put this together in October last year because we didn't have the kit to deliver it. That's how recent the developments on the coding and analytics that we can actually go and do something as complex as this in very short period of time with very little capex. So this is not, why hasn't anybody done this? Actually, it kind of couldn't be done. But last quarter, last year, it changed. And CEOs, for those of you that have spent your life in marketing, CEOs, not CMOs, they look at in a retailer, they look at 3 big pipe of money going down. The stuff that goes to the oaks in marketing that they use to kind of hopefully create sales. The stuff that goes to the CTO to invest in the tech and all this kind of stuff, okay? And the third is the products that we buy and put on the shelves. Those are the 3 big pipes, okay? What products we buy and how we do that has actually always been reasonably data-driven with planners and software and stuff around that, right? That is radically changing to be more effective as well. I think it's much less waste than that pipe. The other 2 pipes are fundamentally loaded with waste and opportunities, all right? When we kind of know that 50% of what we spend creates on attention doesn't create a discernible amount of intention or change in intention. The same is true on the tech side. So the UX journeys we put up, the propositions we put up, the apps that we put up, it's the same thing there. A lot of money goes down that. Actually, how much does it really create a competitive edge? Yeah. Both of these processes are profoundly changing. We're not talking about product development tech here today, but the same thing is happening there. But this is what's going on in marketing. We just call it AI first marketing because I don't know, we don't have a better word. But this is a blueprint. All right? All right.